Hi, Dr. C again. Sorry to put my face in front of you again, but hopefully at least I can give you some good information, some good education on things that you really do need to know. Today we're going to talk about CBD, cannabidiol. Now for some of you know exactly what I'm talking about, but I'm going to make this a very basic little educational program about CBD because it's out there. It's out there. Remember back, a few of you do anyway, I think, back in 1920, alcohol was prohibited. Okay. 1933, 21st Amendment, alcohol now is okay. Back in 1920, 18th Amendment, it wasn't. Pretty similar type of history now with cannabis. Back in 1970, there was an act that the Congress in its infinite wisdom passed, banning a lot of the, quotes, psych type drugs. That included LSD, opioids, marijuana, and hemp. They lumped them all together 1970 and they banned them. And it wasn't really until around 2012 that some of the states then began to get active trying to push and get these things back onto the market again. So in 2014, the state of Colorado passed theirs, and they legitimized in their state, Colorado, they were the first state to allow medical and then recreational marijuana. Here in Massachusetts, back in 1912, I wasn't even here in 1912, 2012, in 2012, medical marijuana was legalized in Massachusetts. I don't know why they call it medical marijuana. It's really not marijuana. There's a distinction between CBD and marijuana. Marijuana itself comes from the cannabis sativa plant. Now there are other cannabis plants, cannabis indica, for example, multiple hybrids of sativa and indica. So it all started though with the sativa plant. Hemp is a cousin of the sativa plant. And there are also sativa and indica types of varieties of hemp as well. The biggest difference between the sativa and hemp is that the sativa plant has many more of the cannabinoids, and I'll explain what they are, cannabinoids and terpenes. They, in fact, have more than most of the plants. And so, hemp doesn't have that many, but they happen to have CBD, cannabidiol, one of the cannabinoids, but not as much, very little in fact, or even none in some, THC, which is the mind-altering portion of the sativa plant. Now, as we go on, now we can buy CBD almost anywhere because finally hemp in 2018 was legalized. That really did push it onto the market, and now they're extracting a lot of CBD from the hemp. Let's explain a little bit about all of the different CBD products, what it does, what it doesn't do. Are there any negatives to it? Okay, let's talk a little bit about the CBD itself. Originally, when the CBD was identified, this was back in 1940 actually, it was identified in the lab. But nobody really did much with it till 1963, 64. Then they began to analyze it a little bit more, and they found out that the CBD itself had some beneficial properties. It wasn't until in the 60s when they found out and identified THC, tetrahydrocannabinol. They identified it, and that had certain properties, mind-altering properties, which CBD didn't seem to have. How did it work? Well, we all have in our bodies an endocannabinoid system. Endo simply meaning within your body. We have a number of systems. We have respiratory system, your lungs and all, cardiac system, your heart and blood vessels, GI system, stomach all the way down to the anus, urinary system, and we also have an endocannabinoid system. Now that endocannabinoid system is all over your body. It happens to have receptors. Those receptors will catch the messengers that we have naturally in our body. And we do have them naturally in our body. Originally, they identified two of those messengers, anandamide and 2-AT. So they identified two at the beginning. Well, of course, there's a lot more now, because now they finally are able to do research on this. Before, all the research that was done in Europe or Asia, because we didn't allow it here in the United States. Finally, we're beginning to get some information, real, true information, on all of the different cannabinoids. The cannabinoids in our body and phytocannabinoids, the cannabinoids in the plants. Why do the plants need cannabinoids? Why do they need them? Why do they need an endocannabinoid system in their body? Well, protect them against UV light. UV rays are hitting those leaves all the time. They need to have some protection. Cannabinoid system is doing it. Some of the plants need protection from different types of little bugs and stuff that are out there. That's what the purpose of the system is. Protect them from the bugs. Also, they may want to repel bugs. Or they may want to attract bees to pollinate so they can get their species going again. All these things are moderated by the endocannabinoid system. Now, what are the components of the system? Plants and in humans. Well, first of all, I told you the endocannabinoids, and we have several. Now they've identified about 8 or 9 of them, but the two major ones I told you about. There are also receptors in the body as well. And those receptors, they identified 2 major receptors, but there are a number of other receptors in the body too. And as time and research goes on, they're identifying more and more and more of them as well. And so you also have receptors, number 1, in the brain, and number 2, in the immune system in your body. Now, what is the immune system? The immune system are the lymph glands, the lymphatics in your body, the spleen, the liver. These are all part of the system that fights infection and fights toxins in the body. That's why it's called the, quotes, immune system. And so, you've got these 2 major receptors in the system. The CB1 receptors are mostly in the limbic portion of the brain. And depending on which portion of the brain gets activated, you may get a desired effect. So for example, if you you don't want to, but let's say that you have a seizure disorder, and it's that particular portion of the brain that is at the central part. That's the focus of that particular seizure. The endocannabinoid system would send then the messengers to the receptors in that portion of the brain to calm it down. They call that the Goldilocks effect. You remember Goldilocks and the Three Bears. The porridge was either too hot, too cold, or just right. The bed was either too soft, too hard, or just right. So this is basically what the endocannabinoid system is doing. It's trying to make things tranquil within your body. That's all it's doing. That's its purpose, to make it better for your body. Just like in the plant, always trying to protect the plant from different things. And so, again, that's the purpose of the system. So we've got the receptors, we got the messengers, and you got the enzymes in the walls of the cells that will produce the messengers, and enzymes then that will stop the effect of the messengers. So you've got enzymes to create them, enzymes to destroy them. So that in that fixed amount of time, it's doing its job. That's the entire endocannabinoid system. So CBD, I'm not going to talk about THC. That's, again, a whole topic unto itself. I'm going to talk about CBD. Well, once they identified the CBD, and now using hemp, they can take it from the marijuana plant, the sativa plant, or they can take it from the indica plant. They can take it from there, and they still do. They still do. But the predominant amount now is coming from hemp. Is there any difference between CBD from the hemp and CBD from the marijuana plant itself? Really, the only difference is in the number of other cannabinoids that are in that particular plant. Also, the aroma is different. The aroma is produced by terpenes. Now, I don't know if any of you have ever been to a lot of wine tastings and stuff, but we used to have, first of all, you looked at it in the glass, then you gave it the nose. Two components to the nose. The aroma, which came from the plant itself, or the grape itself. And then the bouquet. The bouquet is what was imparted by the soil and by what the vintner did to that wine. So you had two components, aroma and bouquet. What are those aromas and bouquets? It gives you, in your olfactory sense, what you're smelling. It gives it an appeal. You want to try this because it really smells good. I know when you used to walk into a room, you could tell if somebody was smoking marijuana. Nowadays, there's all different kinds of aromas that you can impart to that marijuana. And so, that's the terpenes that are doing it. From hemp now, we're going to get that CBD from the hemp. Nowadays, the botanists are getting much, much better. Well, actually, they're able now to get better at doing what they're doing. They're crossbreeding, backbreeding, all sorts of different things that are improving what they want out of that plant. And so we can get now almost pure CBD, almost 95, 96% pure CBD. Is that good or is it bad? Well, at least you would have the effect from the CBD. But is that the only effect that you're looking for? All these other components, the other cannabinoids in the plant, the terpenes in the plant, the flavonoids in the plant, which give it its color, they are also on their own good antioxidants, good anti-inflammatory, etc. And so it may be that you just need a specific terpene or a specific flavonoid or a very specific CBD in order to get that effect. And so, what happens now? What happens? You take your CBD, you can get it in different forms. You could get what they call a full spectrum CBD. They isolate it with all of its terpenes, all of the other cannabinoids, and it's full spectrum. You get all of the effects. That's called an entourage effect, getting them all. Then you may only need a certain amount. So what they're also doing is isolating that CBD, making it into that 95 or so percent CBD, and then adding a specific terpene to it, depending on why you need to take the CBD. If you're taking it to get to sleep, they'll add myrcene, which is one of the terpenes, which is known to cause drowsiness. If you need it for pain, they would give you a different terpene added to that CBD as well. So that's a different approach. There's two different approaches really to using that CBD. The full spectrum or isolating it and adding what you need to it instead of the entourage effect. CBD comes in many different forms now. You can get, of course, the oil. Remember, CBD is an oil base. It's called a liquid messenger, basically. It's a liquid. It's an oil. And so it's a fat, and it gets stored a little in your fat as well. And so it comes as an oil. It also comes in a form of a cream. And you can rub it on specific areas of inflammation in your body, like, say, arthritis, whatever, and it will help to calm those nerve endings down. So it comes as a cream. Comes also as an edible. The problem with the edibles is that it takes a while for it to have its effect. And so somebody would say, eat a brownie that has it in there. And after 10 minutes, they say, nothing. Hey, I'm going to have another one. And after 10 more minutes, still no effect. I'm going to have another one. Well, then all of a sudden it hits you. Now you got triple the dose in that edible, or those 3 edibles that you ate. That's the problem with the edibles. They taste good. And so you may not want to stop. Or you may not you think you're not getting the effect. So you're not patient. You're not waiting until you get the effect. Okay, that's the problem with edibles. Now they're putting CBD into everything. They're putting it into coffee, tea, cola drinks, water. All these things now you can get with CBD in it. The manufacturers are getting they're getting much better at thinking of all these different ways of giving you the CBD. And they're getting very good at it too. Very good at it. I want to warn you though about the edibles. I told you about the 2 problems with it. Be careful when you're trying to use edibles, especially if you're going to drink it. Like if you're drinking the coffee, for example, and if you put the CBD in to calm you down, and you're drinking the extra caffeine in the coffee, you're fighting each other all the time, So you just need a little more. So be very careful with edibles. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit more about hemp. Hemp itself looks like stalks of corn. They're very narrow. They look like bamboo, actually, bamboo or corn, and they grow in stalks. Very easy to distinguish a hemp plant from a sativa plant. Sativa plants grow out. In fact, the more they grow out, the better, because they'll have more flowers and buds. It's the buds where they get a lot of the THC, from those buds. The terpenes come in the trichomes, little things that are around the stems of the plant. So the more flowers and buds you have, the better for sativa. But for hemp, it grows up sometimes 4 or 5 meters in length. Tall plants. The sativa plant is not the best plant for CBD. Sativa plant is great for industrial hemp. The fiber in the sativa plant is hemp plant, sativa hemp plant now I'm talking about. That has very strong fibers in it. So you can make all sorts of things, bedding and clothing and fertilizer, all these different things you can make from the industrial hemp. So let's say that you got the hemp now, and you can use male or female hemp. That's another difference too. For marijuana, you can only use the female plant. So if you happen to be growing up as a male sativa plant, your days are numbered. As soon as they identify you as male, boop, out you go. No use. Okay. So you can use male or female, and it grows up in 4 months. 4 months, you'll have a whole crop of hemp. So it's a very good crop to have. And it's a very useful crop. But unfortunately, nowadays, they're using it more and more and more for CBD, which may or may not be the best use. Now, what does the FDA say about CBD? We know in Massachusetts it's legal. We know hemp is legal. The FDA has no clue how they even want to call this thing. Is it a food? Is it a dietary supplement? Is it a drug? They don't know. Well, if somebody's got to know, they've got to know. They're the ones that are responsible to regulate this whole thing. Now, the hemp industry petitioned the FDA just last year. They wanted to get it to be called a dietary supplement. FDA said no. Why? Because the FDA said this is being used as a drug to treat juvenile epilepsy. In fact, it is. There's a drug that's out there called Epidiolex, which treats Dravet syndrome, which is a rare epileptic disorder in children. So CBD was labeled as a drug by the FDA. So now when the hemp people want to get their approval as a dietary supplement, the FDA said no, it's already classified as a drug. Yeah, but we don't need a prescription for it in Massachusetts. They don't care. They don't care. They're denying it. So what that really means, they're giving the hemp and the marijuana industry, they're giving them a carte blanche. Put whatever you want, say whatever you want, because we don't know what it is. And believe me, they're doing it. They're telling you that CBD is good for almost everything. Treats cancer, diabetes, arthritis, gives you good pain relief, gives you sleep. Well, and they're telling you this. Don't believe a thing the marketers tell you. I've told you this about all of the other dietary supplements in the past. Never, ever believe what the companies are telling you, because They are out to make a buck. They could care less about you. All they want to do is make a buck, and they're doing it. These things are not cheap. So what you want to do is get the best bang for your buck. If you have to take it, you got to take the right stuff. How do you know a company is a good, reputable company and they're putting out a reputable product? Last year, they did an independent place, looked at all the different CBDs that are out on the market. And only 10% of them, 10% met what was on the label. 10%. Why? Because nobody is regulating them. That's why. So, what should you look for? First of all, look for a company that's been out there for a number of years, especially the companies from Colorado. They have some very, very good, solid companies from Colorado. Number two, you want to make sure that they are independently tested so that what's on the label is what's in that particular product. Those two simple things, good, reputable place and independent testing. Then you have a good product. Now, that doesn't mean that the product is going to work 100% for you. If you're fortunate, it will. And you have two forms. You have either the full spectrum CBD and you have the isolated CBD, the one that's all purified with the terpene added for what you need it for. You always need to take something with a reason for taking it. You're not just taking it like the potheads to feel good. You're taking it for a particular medical reason. That's why I don't like the term medical marijuana. It's not marijuana. It is CBD. Marijuana implies that mind-altering effect that you get from THC. We don't want that. All these CBD products have less than 0.3 milligrams of THC in them, and that's by law. So, a lot of products out there. You've got to be careful where you're buying it and how you buy it. Don't spend your money irrationally. Very good. I have other things that I would like to present about cannabis in general, and maybe we can have another session on it in the future. Thank you. This is Dr. C.